It is the demarcation point because it looks like it is capable of thinking.
Welcome to How AI Happens, a podcast where experts explain their work at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence. You'll hear from AI researchers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers as they get technical about the most exciting developments in their field and the challenges they're facing along the way. I'm your host, Rob Stevenson, and we're about to learn how AI happens. Here with me today on How AI Happens is the VP Division Manager and first overall hire over at Gong, Jacob Eckel. Jacob, welcome to the podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I am really thrilled to have you on. Gong is a company I know decently well, and for anyone listening, I'm sure they know it as well too, but if you don't, go ask anyone in your sales department, and I promise you they know all about Gong. It's an amazing company, and you're doing some really cool things with technology, which is what I want to get into with you. But first, I would just love to know a little bit more about you and your background and how you came to be at Gong.
So I spent most of my career with startups. I like the thrill of taking startups from 0 to 1. I did this a few times. My early career was in the financial technology. Again, today we would call it AI, but these days we call it just old simple statistical inference and predictive analytics, stuff like that, machine learning. Today we would call it AI. So with Gong, we happily call it AI, the same technology, but just evolved immensely since early days. So I indeed started with Gong in 2015. I joined the founders, Elon and Amit. I joined actually before the company was incorporated formally. And since then, I'm here at Gong. And we're still trying to take it from 0 to 1. So though, as you mentioned, we probably already arrived maybe at 1. Let's see if we can arrive at 2.
Yeah, it feels like you're maybe 1.5 these days. Not for me to say.
Yeah, fair to say.
I love speaking to people in your position who remember when AI was math. And now it's funny that you have to, like you said, the technology evolves. Here we are. And Gong, for anyone who doesn't know, maybe I'll not pitch the product since I have employee number 1 on the line here. Would you share a little bit about what the company does? Because I think that will set some important context for when we go into the cool sort of tech you're deploying right now.
Yeah, so Gong is an AI-powered revenue intelligence platform. That's how we look at it. So it's a platform, a suite of products that leads and supports salespeople on their journey from lead to closure of the deal. And we kind of wrap them with this technology, with AI technology to make their work much easier and effective. So that's our mission, to make customer-facing teams much more effective using AI.
Yeah, I've used Gong a couple of times. There was a moment where I spoke to an early marketer about a job at Gong, and my life would be much different if I had taken that. It was unfortunate because I had just taken another role when I sat down with like one of your first marketing hires. So we might have been coworkers, Jacob, but as it is, it's 6 years later and we're doing the podcast. So maybe we were destined to meet, but
you can try again.
Are you hiring for podcasters? I don't know.
Maybe you can check. It's possible.
I would actually love to upload one of my podcast episodes to Gong and to see what it says. And they're like, oh, Rob, it says here you talk way too much and you're not asking enough questions.
Certainly possible, but I don't think that will happen today. Probably I will be talking too much.
Well, that is the point. No one's tuning in to hear me talk about AI, that's for sure. So my experience with Gong is you have these sales calls, you're able to feed the sales calls through Gong, and it gives you all these insights and it tells you, oh, you need to spend more time here in the conversation. We've compared it to all of these cases where deals close from this call. So it's fantastically valuable insight on the sales process. And so I would just love to know, where does the AI come in?
Yeah. So the magic with Gong happens because we have a bunch of information, bunch of data about what is going in the sales processes. Mainly we can think about the data in 3 categories. One is the conversations, sales conversations, which we transcribe, and then we have all the texts of conference calls and phone calls. We have the emails of the customers and we have the CRM data. And so the mix of these three main, we have a little bit more additional events, but mix of these three components or data components is what creates the 360 like view around the customer. We see everything going on and we can combine the data using AI just to provide a help and insight to the customer. And so AI actually used in several ways in Gong, in many ways in Gong. First of all, the actual transcription of conversations. It's like an old story these days, but you'll be amazed of what is done to make these transcripts correct and to capture exactly the conversation that is going on. It's a non-trivial AI technology, even that we think it is like old technology. It also evolves all the time, so it's like a basic AI technology that we have. On top of this, we have several types of models. Some of them are built by Gong. Some of them are built by the customers using their data in Gong. Some of them are the standard models that you can buy in the market, like GPT or Anthropic. So we use the models available on the LLMs mainly available in the market. So from these three types of models, we can construct any use case that we need for our customers.
I'm pleased to hear that you are sort of empowering customers to build their own models. That feels like an important shift really in software in general, right? It's not merely here's our product, you subscribe to our product. It's like our product is going to allow you to build your own product essentially. And so while empowering those customers, what kind of things are they building with their own models?
At some point, we decided that we cannot build every model for our customers because we don't really know which models to build. It's a huge scale, huge number of customers, and they have their own ideas. And so at some point, we decided it would be a great idea to give them the ability to empower them to build their own models using their own data, the data they keep with us. We call this capability smart trackers. And basically, it's an active learning system that allows like not data scientist customers. They're not data scientists. We're not expect that our customers suddenly become a data scientist and will learn about modeling and everything. So we give them a very intuitive, relatively simple environment in which they can define their own models. They can decide what they want to track, which events and the conversations they want to identify, and I'll build these models for them. So things that the customers do, for example, identify competition. For each customer, we don't know who are their competitors. They know perfectly well. So they can train a model which identifies when their customers mention competition, like this one example. Another example, like things that customers complain about. Okay, let's say that some of our customers want to know when their customers complain about their support. It's a very important event that they want to identify. Or many times they build trackers related to legal compliance. Their salespeople are supposed to say certain things in certain way. It's a legal requirement. Surprisingly, there are quite a long list of legal requirements that apply to salespeople. And so it depends on the industry and the situation. And so the companies want to know whether their salespeople actually comply with these requirements. So these are typical models that they build. Also, things like various playbooks, sales playbooks. Sales playbooks is a set of kind of recommendations, standard recommendations that many companies apply, and they want to know whether their sales force follows these playbooks, and so they want to identify the elements of these playbooks. I can give an example, like for example, metrics. What does the organization need to succeed? Or economic buyer, whether they identify the economic buyer, whether they decided during the calls who the economic buyer is. And the company wants to know whether these steps, these basic steps of sales process are followed. And if not, if they forgot, for example, to identify the economic buyer, they can come to another meeting and start from this question exactly.
So Gong is sitting on tons of data, right? Because all of these sales calls from all of the customers are recorded. But when customers build their model, are they leveraging all of that data or are they leveraging just their own data?
It depends on the model. So if the model is built by the customer, it's their data and their model. They cannot use other companies. There is no sense to use other companies' data because they want to build something for themselves. However, we also provide prepackaged models built by Gong. In this case, we build this on all data that we legally allowed to use. Not all data we're allowed to use, but we have very large actually amount of data that we can legally use for building models. And so once we build the models, we give it to all of the customers.
And then what about if a customer, they're like a smaller company, they've not been around that long, maybe they don't have that much of their own data. Is it still meaningful for them to build their own model?
Yes and no. So like in the beginning, you cannot start building your models because you don't have enough data. But typically, this waiting period that you need to wait and accumulate data that you can build a model for yourself is relatively short. Like I can give you an example. Let's say a 10 salespeople company probably will need to wait a month or maybe two until they have enough data to build basically any model they want. So it's a kind of a waiting period, but it's not too long.
So it's a couple of months, but what is like that critical mass of data? Like that could probably take a varying amount of time.
There is just a basic limitation of basically the number of words that has been said until you get enough data that you can bring a model. And we control for that. So we count the conversation that happened. And once we see the critical data is achieved, we unlock this capability. Again, they still can, during this time, they still can use the prepackaged models that are available from day one. On the other hand, if the company is large, they can reach the critical data like in one day. I told you it's like a small company with 10 salespeople, they needed to wait a little bit. But a large company, they like in 2 days, they have a sufficient number of data.
How many words is it?
I don't really remember. I think it's around 500 conversations.
500. Okay. Yeah. So huge company, a couple of days. And I guess it depends. Like every company is different, right? The sales cycle are longer, some half-hour call, hour-long call, long demo, whatever. So, okay. But yeah, that is being tracked and they're building towards, okay, here's your progress bar. Ding. Now you have enough data to make a model. That's like, as a part of a normal sales cycle, you will reach that. It's not like you need decades of legacy data to be able to play.
In many cases, by the way, we import the data they already have before they join Gong. Some companies collect data even before. So again, in this case, usually on the first day, they already have the needed amount of data. So it depends on the customer, but really, it's not a huge obstacle to adopting smart trackers.
Gotcha. So when you think of the models that Gong is building, how are you training them?
We have dedicated teams to train. Now we're switching to the models that are prepackaged by Gong. So models prepackaged by Gong obviously are built by Gong, and we use our internal teams. We have a great team of data scientists in my division and in other divisions also. And so they work on this. This is their job to build these models. They produce them. We call it a factory. It's a kind of a process, a pipeline that they need to apply, how this data is collected, filtered, how the models are created. There is a pipeline. So they work around this pipeline to create these models. So we add the new models all the time to the process.
Gotcha. So the models that Gong is making anyway, they're not merely like a dashboard, here's all of your insights like you would expect from software. The user is able to query it in addition, correct?
The models, what they produce, so we didn't talk about the generative models. These are classifiers, that the models that we mentioned up to now, they're classifiers. And what they do, they identify events in the stream of conversation. And then you can do something with these events. So it's like you have all these streams of conversations and emails, everything is going on, and we'll just like pin. We put here they talk about this, and here they talk about this, and here they talk about this. And they can collect in various parts of the application. All these events are collected and then presented in various parts of the application to help with the task they're doing. For example, in the pipeline review, they can see these events and say, okay, this is our pipeline review is like seeing all the deals that are currently going in the company. And they can see, oh, let's look at this deal. In this deal, the decision process didn't happen. The conversation around decision process didn't happen. We don't see this marker, don't see this pin created by the model. We need to talk about this. So we know what we need to talk about with the customer on the next meeting. So you see, it's like provides you the assistance you need in the process. So give you a little bit points of interest in the conversations.
Okay, right. So in those cases, how are you pulling out those important things? Like, how do they decide, okay, this is really crucial to a deal?
It's the customer's decisions. It really depends on how customers structure their business processes. We're not in a position to tell customers how they do their business, and different customers do seriously different things in their business process, different industries, different people, different managers. There are various sales methodologies in the market, and different managers adhere to this or that methodology. Some of them do not believe in sales methodology, some of them do. And so they decide. So we have this configuration screen where they can decide. We're interested in these events, we're not interested in these events. And then we pop up what is really interesting for them, for this specific customer.
Got it. Okay, I asked because, as you've called out, there are all these specific things that are really important to hone in on, no matter to whom you're selling, where you're selling. Things like, did they mention competitors? Is the economic buyer involved? These are just like, this is the things that salespeople are trained on, right? Like, this is what you need to look out for. So, of course, that's kind of made its way into the product. But also, if you've spent time with salespeople, they spend all this time developing rapport, small talk, building trust, trying to add value for a long, long time before they make asks. Things that I would call the softer skills in a deal. That's like less, like something you maybe can't log in Salesforce. Something you can't say like, oh, do they have budget on time? Or do they have budget this quarter? That's like a yes, no answer. That's information you can solicit, but it's not like the joke you tell in the tee box at the golf course, like some of these sort of stereotypical salesperson things. Are you tracking those like softer skills, these like rapport building? Is that part of it?
The general question is no. And we have been asked many times about this aspect. And I think our current vibe is there's a limit to this technology. We are still a very evolved apes and stuff that we do. Not everything that we can do or tell or say is really trackable by automated tools. The interesting that the history of natural language processing, sentiment analysis was a very significant part of the reasons why natural language processing developed. And people use it successfully for various things, like with support or to categorize feedback in sales applications. And so people ask us from time to time whether sentiment analysis is like a thing. And in our expert opinion, we did lots of work in this area. It still looks like there is some element, as you say, the softer elements of human communication that are not yet trackable by machines. So no, we don't track jokes yet. Some people ask us, do we track the facial expression of the customers? That would be very interesting. We don't do this yet, but who knows? The technology evolves all the time. It is possible that we will start tracking like facial expression and the body language and stuff like this. That starts to sound a little bit scary, but who knows? Not there yet, though.
Right. Okay. The answer is not yet. But I asked because I'm wondering, like, does it matter? Does that stuff that like a lot of the salespeople I've met that they tend to prioritize and like this whole relationship building aspect of sales, and they I've heard that a million times. Sales is relationship based. Is that true? Or would it be better off to just cut to the chase and just do all of these things that say, hey, if you do these 8 things, Gong has proven that means a deal is more likely to close? I don't know.
Yeah, we cannot disprove that the softer parts of the communication are as useful as the following a playbook. We cannot prove that. And my feeling is that there is lots of things that going through the conversation that are nonverbal, soft stuff, joke stuff like this, bring a conversation to a friendly level, stuff like this. I think it makes a lot of difference. We don't have yet the science to prove this point. I'm quite convinced that there is lots of, if you ever sold anything or bought anything, and from time to time I buy stuff from vendors, I feel there is a huge difference whether the salesperson is friendly and how they position themselves and how they talk about things and whether they're interested in you as a buyer. It's a valid question, and I think there is something there. We are not yet ready to do science on this, but it should come at some point, I suppose.
Certainly. When you say that we're not quite there yet with this sort of analysis, it makes me think about how every company they're trying to build an AI chatbot. They're trying to mimic human conversation. And the expectation is that a human will interact with this AI as if that AI is another human. But yet the part of being human, the telling the joke at the tee box, right, is not there yet. So is that a crucial piece to solve before we can expect people to trust a chatbot, to trust an AI avatar?
It's a long way, I think. We are very careful not to say, like 5 years ago, we would say, oh, it's science fiction. No, never will come. Now we are much more careful saying no to such ideas because we see the rate of development of models and they're becoming smarter and smarter by the day. And so we are careful not to say it will never come. It's not there. The models, the chatbots are not capable at this point, even the smartest of them, that they don't have a drive, they don't have ideas of themselves. They cannot ask questions. The basic thing that no chat system in the world today is capable of producing the questions of itself, or like clarifying itself. And if I ask something and it's not very clear to the model, it could ask, please explain what you mean. It doesn't do this. And some models try to do this, but they don't do this reasonable like we people do. We're like trying to maintain a conversation which goes both ways. These models are very unidirectional. If you ask them questions, they will answer. It's not a real conversation going on there.
Great point. And like you say, they will answer. They won't say, I don't know. They might say, I can't tell you that.
They won't say, can you clarify that? They won't say, what else you would like to know about this, unless it's like just a mechanical thing at the end of the conversation. What else I can help you? But the human conversation goes way beyond that. They like, when you talk to me, you're trying to understand what bothers me. And then sometimes you ask questions that I didn't understand or didn't have the idea to ask. You help me because you're like putting yourself in my shoes. These models are not capable of doing anything like this. And so in very, very simple sales scenarios, yes, the agents will work. In very simple support scenarios, agents already work well. But for a real significant sales conversation, they're not yet there.
When you say that, you're very careful not to never say never, right? Say, no, you won't have this. You say it's because, just the rapid growth and progress we've seen recently is so immense, right? It'll make your neck snap, right? And I hear that on the show, like, the pace of change and the progress in this space is so fast. And I was tickled. I had a guest refer to traditional generative, meaning like the generative we were doing in like October last year. And so, we take that for granted. Of course, it's AI. It moves fast. It's tech. But I don't know, maybe it's a squishy question, but do you have an opinion on why things seem to be getting faster and faster? Is it like increase in processing? Is it more investment and awareness or more people working in this space? Why is the space moving faster than ever?
We suddenly understand that the opportunity in this area is more or less endless. It was not the realization like 5 years ago. We knew there is an opportunity. We knew that we can make many interesting things. We at Gong started as an AI company, basically. And we knew that lots of things can be automated, lots of things can be done. But suddenly in the last few years, with the development of things like GPT, we suddenly realized that the bar of what is possible is way, way, way higher than we saw before. And this changed really the mindset of people working in this area. Suddenly I realized that the ROI there, it's like infinity ROI. We've never been in this position. We could say, okay, we invest in this technology, we develop stuff such and such, and we will get some ROI, a reasonable one, or a very good ROI on investment in this area. And currently we are in the position that many people think that the ROI is more or less infinite. And this is why people invest more money, people find ways to bring data, people bring more hardware, which is basically money, energy. People bring more brains, like people into the business, because when the ROI sounds like infinity, like infinite ROI, people will stop doing everything else and focus on this thing. And currently in our environment in tech, this is the only thing that we think that the ROI is infinite. So it's surprising that everyone talks AI, everyone loves it.
What do you think is responsible for that realization? Is it generative LLMs? Is that the breakthrough?
Yes, I think that the first GPT, or around GPT 3.5 maybe, or around this point in time, we suddenly realized that the potential is much higher than we thought before. We had this glass ceiling in AI. We knew more or less what things can be done, but this glass ceiling went upwards so high that we don't see this new ceiling. We don't know where it is, what will stop. Something will stop. Nothing grows exponentially forever. So I belong to the class of people that think it's more like S curve. It's not like exponential growth to infinity. At some point we will see the rounding of the S curve, but we don't see it yet. So currently it looks like no glass ceiling at all.
GPT 3.5 and later, is that kind of the demarcation point just because this is the conception of what we always thought AI was, this idea that this ability to commune with a machine as if it were a person?
It is the demarcation point because we suddenly realized that it looks like it is capable of thinking. Because before we said, okay, yeah, we called it machine learning. Machine learns something and does something. But suddenly around GPT-3 or 3.5, we realized that it fakes thinking, but it certainly looks like it is thinking. And so it brings the insight that was not possible before, absolutely not possible, not dreamt before. So people didn't expect this level of thinking.
That's really well put, that it looks like it is capable of thinking, which is also what my first grade teacher wrote on my report card. We'll see what he does with it. But in any way, that was really beautifully said, Jacob. And so thank you for sharing this with me and for sharing all about Gong's models and your opinions on generative and where we are now. We are creeping up on optimal podcast length here. So I think this is probably a good place for us to wind down. So at this point, I'll just say thanks again, Jacob, for being here. I really loved chatting with you today.
It was great chatting with you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
How AI Happens is brought to you by Sama. Sama provides accurate data for ambitious AI. Specializing in image, video, and sensor data annotation and validation for machine learning algorithms in industries such as transportation, retail, e-commerce, media, medtech, robotics, and agriculture. For more information, head to sama.com.